Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not So Comic Book. This being a show, we're talking about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the series premiere of Wandance. Great series premiere. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So I think this is a really interesting concept for a series. We get introduced to our main protagonist, Cabo, who has a stutter, and it almost seems like this, obviously it's a very small town where it's like, in his mind, it's almost like being cool and coming off cool is all that matters, because I think it stems from the fact is he doesn't want to stand out too much because of his stutter, and I think because of that he chooses not to talk around people because he probably always felt embarrassed by it, because it's always a thing you kind of have to, because he even explains it to Wanda in the episode, and I think he's probably always had to do that, like, because he doesn't want people to misunderstand. He's like, no, I'm not nervous, I just have a stutter. And I think it probably is just a thing of like, even when he was talking to his friends, he just kind of smiles and kind of nods, but it seems like that's always been his thing. He just kind of goes along with the flow rather than kind of doing more so what he wants, because his friends are like, oh, let's sign up for basketball and stuff. It's like, oh, do you notice this dance club dancing? And he's like, nah, I'm too sleepy to pay attention to it. And it's like, he's like, oh, I'm too embarrassed to look at him. I'm like, why is that? But we find out why, because it's all kind of deals with, I don't know if trauma is the right word, but it's like embarrassment. And probably after that situation, he probably always wanted to be cool. He never wanted to be laughed at, because maybe he's gotten laughed at because of his stutter. So he thought like, okay, as long as I'm quiet, it's fine. But now like I do something else that makes people laugh at me, it made him turn so inwards that it's just kind of an overcorrection to try and like, I don't want to feel that way anymore. So that might be what this whole situation stems from, maybe. And because of that, he just kind of, like I said, goes with the flow with his friends, because they're like, hey, oh, you're going to sign up for basketball, right? And even though he's even slightly interested in the dance club, but he doesn't think like, oh, like, I'm not cut out for it. But then he sees Wanda, and she's like got her face puckered up, like when she looked at it. And then he was like, why was she making that face? I'll go ahead and talk about this. I don't know if this is true or not, because I went into this knowing Cabo had the stutter, but I don't know about Wanda. You think Wanda's going to end up having Tourette's or something? Because she does certain things in this episode. I'm like, oh, are those like facial tics? I was wondering, because like when Cabo asked her later on why she likes to dance, and she's like, why? And she makes this very big, wide-eyed expression, and then it kind of immediately changes, and then she like makes the pouty face, and then she pinches herself down. I'm like, oh, do you have, because in my head for most of my life, I always associated Tourette's with like the verbal Tourette's, those being your tics. I never, wasn't until like a couple years ago. Like, probably a great example would be like Sweet Anita, the streamer. She was probably my introduction to like, oh, like how like expanded my knowledge of Tourette's and like how it manifests itself. So like you can have like physical tics as well, and I never knew that. Because my first introduction was like, it's kind of another example, but I believe Michael, is it Bowen? I always forget how to pronounce his last name, but he's the screamer for this metalcore band called Woe Is Me. It wasn't until years ago they did a video on him on Rise Records, and it showed like he has a Tourette's type tic, like where he kind of like blink, like winks. And I was like, I think that was like my first introduction, and then like Sweet Anita kind of expanded upon it. I'm sorry going on this whole diatribe, but it feels like that might be what that's about, especially what both of them are trying to get out of dance, but I'll get into that later. But he ended up seeing Wanda dancing by herself, and he was captivated by it. But then one of his friends was videoing her, and it was just like, oh, look at this. And he's trying to say like, hey, you probably shouldn't do that. He's like, oh, look at this. Like, you might, like, I'm waiting for his friend was like, oh, I'm waiting for like the cool shot of like her skirt coming up so you could see something. And he didn't want to look. But then when he's sitting beside her in class, because they have to exchange papers and kind of like check stuff, he's just kind of like, I'm sorry. He's like, I'm sorry. I actually did look for a second. He started getting embarrassed, even though he doesn't say that out loud, but internal monologue wise. And he kind of talks to her a little bit, and he's trying to explain like, oh, I'm not talking like this because I'm nervous. And she's like, okay. She doesn't like ask any questions, and she's not chastising him about it. Like I said, that the fact is he feels the need to constantly explain himself must mean like that's just something he always runs into, those misunderstandings. We even see that later on when they were at basketball practice or whatever, and the girls were captivated by his buddy, and he's like, "Oh, come over here," and he's trying to talk, and once again, he's still trying to put the bravado, trying to be like, "Cool, ha 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 ha," and he just comes off a little, a little cringy because you're trying too hard. Understand, as a fellow tryhard who wanted to be cool, especially in high school, I understand that, but you just because you're trying to fast track fitting in. And they're like, "Oh, you're not nervous or anything like that." And they're like, "Oh, don't worry about it. Even though he talks like this, he's not a weirdo." And it's like, that's not a thing a friend should say. Because they've been friends, I think, since like middle school. And I don't know if this is like their first year of high school. It must be their first year of high school. But they were like on the same like basketball team in middle school as well. And I think that's also where like the trauma from like the dance video and being laughed at stemmed from. But I think it speaks volumes that we don't see like Cabo talk to his friends really. Like he just once again he just kind of goes with the flow. He's actually having conversations with Wanda and just being like, oh, like especially like when they're like testing, like being tested, she doesn't have a lot of grip strength and she's frustrated. And they're like, oh my god, it's actually kind of cute how frustrated. It's like, oh, like you're not that strong. And it's like, oh, don't you need kind of strength for dancing? It's just like, maybe. And he kind of explained this whole situation of not liking to dance in front of other people, and that's why he gets embarrassed every time he sees dancing because it just kind of re-triggers all of that for him. But then she kind of brings up like understanding that, I mean, obviously it takes a lot of like courage and whatnot to kind of, be able to dance freely in front of people because even she doesn't dance in front of people. She kind of, silos herself off and practices her dancing. This episode also taught me something I never knew because I've only heard the chorus for Scatman. I've never heard like extended version. Like this episode was like the most I'd ever heard of the Scatman song. I did not know Scatman John had Tourette's. In fact, it even says like, oh yeah, like the people in every performer in that video also had not Tourette's. I said Tourette's. Sorry, I meant stutter. That Scatman John had a stutter, and that everyone else in all the performers also had a stutter. I was like, oh man, that's so interesting. It's like, oh, taking a thing which was a weakness and you turned it into a strength. And it's like, oh, the correlation and connection to Cabo in that regard, because we see him like reading and practicing books to kind of work through his stutter. I was like, wow, that's such a really interesting like angle to take in this story. Because like, I don't think I've watched. I'm trying to think of like, have I ever heard of like a character with a stutter in an anime? It probably has come up and I just don't remember. But like, obviously being such a pivotal point because it's a part of this character, it's part of his growth to kind of like overcome something he views as kind of something that stops him in many different regards. Like I said, I think he's just always wanted to be so cool and feeling like accepted that it's just like he, like I said, doesn't like to talk a lot because he doesn't want that to come up and just wanting to fit in and feeling like at least a little normal and not stand out as a bit of a weirdo. But like I said, to correlate that and connect it to Scatman John, I thought was really interesting. But what upsets him later on is that his buddy posted the video. Like it wasn't just staying on his phone. Like I don't know if he posted it online, but at least like their group chat or whatever, he posted it, and Cabo didn't like that. Because for him, it's just like, yo, this is such a small place surrounded by like fields and stuff. Like, why get so caught up in titles and stuff like that? Because his friend was a complete and utter douche about it too. Because like, I mean, he'd already been a little douchey towards Cabo. And maybe as things get explored and maybe once Cabo comes a little more out of his shell, maybe his buddy won't seem like such a dick. But right now he seems like a tool. But it's like his reason for doing that is because it's like, oh, he's like bad mouthing Wanda saying like, oh, because she thinks she's so great because she dances and stuff. He's like, yeah, his main reason for doing that is because like, oh yeah, when I tried to talk to her, she was just like, gave me short answers like, yeah, okay. And it's just like, you'll assume like maybe her reasons for that is because she doesn't feel comfortable talking to people. Like maybe she's bashful. And like I said, just like Cabo has his stutter, like if I am correct, I could be wrong, but like I said, maybe she has a form of Tourette's that she kind of gets nervous about. Because we don't really see her interact with anyone other than Cabo this episode either. So we don't know. So maybe she kind of, it's a little, not necessarily defensive, but maybe it's just a byproduct of her not, feeling comfortable in their own skin in some capacities. Even though she seems like she perfectly is, there's a lot more overlap between her and Cabo in that regard. But Cabo was like, yo, you need to delete the video. But even his friend was like, yo, you're not stuttering. He's like, don't change the subject. And he's like, even if it comes off like I'm lame and cringy or whatever, he's like, I would rather be that and be labeled a weirdo than be normal and kind of be like you. And he runs away. And he's like, yo, what's up with Cabo? And the other guy was like, hey, maybe you should delete the video. Because it's like seeing like, oh, like Cabo might have a point, and also how much it upsets him. Because it's probably a thing of Cabo probably never tells people how he's really feeling. So for him to kind of speak up in that matter, his buddy's probably like, yeah, man, like, yeah. So probably should delete the video, because that is probably like effed up that you did. I mean, for one, you secretly took the record. I think he even like was implying like, oh yeah, she gave me permission to do it too, even though it's complete and utter horseshit, you know? But he goes and finds Wanda, and he sees her dancing, which I haven't commented on yet, which I think is kind of interesting. It's going to take a little while to like adjust it in my head, because I don't see it like happen, like, because it's, and I'm assuming it's going to happen frequently throughout this anime, is like the switch between like the 2D animation and then specifically like the 3D CG animation is probably going to like be a little jarring, because I'm not used to it. Like, because if it gets used a little bit, sure, here and there, but like never like, it's probably going to be used extensively in this. And I mean, I think that's kind of a nice like way to kind of accentuate the dancing segment. So it seems like that's purely going to be that. Also, I do like the like oil painting styling to like the background. I think that's kind of a nice juxtaposition to like both like the natural like 2D character models, but also like the CG elements, because I think there's 2D CG as well, but especially with the 3D CG, like I think that's an interesting contrast between all those different animation stylings in that regard. But Cabo sees her dancing and says like, hey, like, you know, I'm thinking of joining the dance club, but he's like, all I can really do is this, and he starts doing the Running Man, and he's like, you know. He's like, do you think, but he's like, I don't really remember anything else, and it's not really that good. But she's like, okay. She's like, I think you should put your arms like this and lift your head up, because she's like, it's hard to really judge without music. And he's like, I thought for sure you were gonna laugh at me. She's like, of course not, because she's like, you know. And she's like, I finally know why I like dancing and why I want to enjoy it so much. And it's like, because it's freeing. And obviously for him, like, that spoke volumes. It's like what he was hoping to get out of dancing, and why he was captivated by her dancing in the first place is because she kind of didn't worry about anyone else. She was in her own world. She was captivated by the music and the dancing, and it just freed her from any just other outside BS. It was just her, the music, and her dancing. And that's so, like, she looks so free. And her saying that, like, finally putting those words out there hit, like, you know, Cabo like a freight train, because it's like, yeah, that's exactly how I feel. So yeah, just thought this kind of a cute and beautiful start to the series, and I'm really interested to see where things go and progress from here, them joining the dancing club, and how that progresses and how that affects them both going forward. There's a theme I forgot to talk about earlier in this episode, and I think it is going to be relevant, and it's relevant to obviously the larger themes of this show series going forward, but just like the whole thing about him in basketball, like how he would pass the ball to someone else because he doesn't like people focusing on him. So it's like easier just to pass the ball, let someone else get the attention rather than himself. But that's going to be in direct contrast with like, well, being a dancer, you're going to have to dance. And that was the whole thing. He had that conversation with Wanda too, where it's like, you kind of have to like dance in sync with people too. So that's got to be pretty hard as well. So those themes and elements, because she had talked about the fact is the way he passed and everything. She was like, oh, it shows how like you're very good at passing and assisting. And she's like, oh, it just shows how you're very keen and very aware of your surroundings. But for him, it's like, it's not really that. It's more so like, I'm only keen to my surroundings because I'm so overly focused and overly aware of it, and that kind of stipends him. And even talks about like basketball feeling so suffocating, and now like it's tying that back to that feeling of freedom they both get from dancing. So I think it was still relevant and pertinent to bring that up thematically in the discussion, especially how that plays out going forward, that maybe he might be able to start tuning out the rest of the world, not being as cognizant about the people around him. Well, to some extent, you have to be when it comes to like if you're dancing in a group, but you know, that focusing on that versus what people are going to think, what people are going to feel about it. It's more about what you feel and what you get out of it more than like if anyone's laughing at you. And you know, and I think these are those steps. Both of them are taking steps, kind of moving forward to their freedom and, like I said, feeling comfortable with themselves. So, but yeah, I've run my mouth off long enough. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.